that's the issue with my background too. Welcome to another episode of Command Control Power, and happy anniversary to Apple. Happy 50th. Wow.
That's right.
Hooray.
Look at that. April 1st, 1776.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. It's the nation's 250th anniversary this year, and Apple's 50th. So pretty wild. April 1st, as we record, that is their official anniversary. Not a joke. That's real. And, it's, I mean, what can you guys say about this, amazing 50th anniversary of the company? It seems like, to me, it seems like not like 50. They've been around forever, right? It's like 50 years doesn't sound like that much.
Well, one of the reasons older than Apple.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I tuned in was I thought David Pogue was going to be here. And if he's not going to be here, this is the only podcast he hasn't appeared on in the last couple of weeks.
Nice.
Right. Nice. Advertising his book. So I don't know. You guys probably get the reference. Maybe the listeners don't. David Pogue wrote a terrific book called Apple at 50. And it's got beautiful color pictures in it. And it's almost 600 pages of text. And he goes in deep. And he talks about everything. So it's a really highly recommended book. And I think you can get it on Amazon for a huge discount, like $33. It's a hardcover. It's well worth the price.
Bad. Yeah.
No.
Nice.
Cool.
Very cool. Yeah. Good recommendation. I know you said you watched a couple of those podcasts with him, right? There was one that was pretty interesting with like some good storytelling and whatnot.
Yeah, he did a feature at the Computer Museum in Massachusetts, right? Isn't that where that is?
That sounds right. I think there's a few.
Yeah, we'll run with it.
Yeah, we'll run with it. Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't the one where it was. But anyway, all the celebrities were in the audience. They brought on Avi Tevanian. They had Ron Wade in the audience, one of Apple's first investors that went in with Steve and Woz. So I highly recommend that. And we can put that in the show notes, but worth a watch.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds really cool. I mean, it's a great occasion just to like take a walk down memory road. I think that was kind of the idea of doing a show here to commemorate things. Listeners in the chat, if you're already here joining us, feel free to sound off in the comments with any of your stories. We had maybe a couple of submissions. I put this, request out only yesterday. So all of, half a day's notice or something, if you feel like contributing, you can send in a little video clip of yourself, commenting on what did Apple mean to you over all these years. Mike Kingsley in the chat already has a good question we can kind of throw out to you all and the listeners out there. But what was everyone's first Apple computer? He says his was an Apple IIc. That's a great question. Adam Rice of Ask Adam said the Apple II Plus, and he even has the correct spelling with the brackets there, the opposite facing brackets as Apple
cool.
did it to make Roman numerals. I remember seeing that on those computers in elementary school or whatever when in the computer lab and seeing how Apple typed that. It's pretty neat. What was yours, Sam? What was your first?
I guess maybe Kingsley and I are the same age. I don't know, but mine was also an Apple IIc. My father got it from we didn't buy it new. Yeah. We got it from somebody and like put it on my desk in my room one day.
Nice.
Like, whoa, what is this? One of those situations.
And it's not like, oh, this is a new computer, like to replace the old computer. This is better. It's like, this is a computer. Like, right? Like it's like a 0 to a 1 situation. There's no computer. Now there's a computer. Yeah.
That's a good point.
How did you dive in? Like, you just turn it on and see what happens? Like, do you remember those kinds of early days getting into it?
What's funny is like, I don't, to be 100% honest, I don't remember a lot of like how I played with it that much because I was a big Commodore guy. And I got the Commodore 128 when I was younger as well. And I played like, some of the games on there. So I'm trying to think back of like my early uses of Apple at that age versus like coming into it as an adult, which is when I really started to dive in.
Right. Yeah.
You were in it in like elementary school, right? Or something?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this was when Apple was investing in the school systems, and this was like a really shrewd move. I mean, this is what the social media companies do now. They hook the kids on the product, and then you're like a lifelong addict. But that they made me an Apple user because they just that was the option we had in the classroom. They had a whole room full of at that point it was probably mostly Apple IIe's, I think. And the Apple II GS was like the newer, cooler one. I can't remember if that had color yet, but it had some like newer features and things. And our first computer at home was like yours, Sam. It was, my dad brought it home. It was the guy that worked for him. It was his old computer. So, it was a hand-me-down of a hand-me-down kind of thing. And I remembered, seeing them in school, and then we had one at home, and I didn't really know what I was doing with it, but it had BASIC on it. And probably a friend of mine showed me, you could type these commands and it'll do stuff. And it was my first experience with computer programming, BASIC, right? Probably for a lot of people, it's similar. And you could create a loop very easily. You could say, repeat 10 times that do this, end repeat. I think it was something along those lines. Or with BASIC, I think it was like, it would go line by line through the program. So if you wanted to have it like repeat something, you would say go to. So they'd be like line 1, do this, line 2, do this, line 3, do this. Then like line 4 was go back to line 2, basically go to 2 or something, and it would repeat. So the thing that I got it to do is just basically display text on screen. And it would just make a wall of text and keep like scrolling, infinitely until you pressed escape or however you quit that, shut it down or whatever. I probably didn't know how to quit it, like with an interrupt command. I think I had to shut down the whole computer. So this was like, just figuring it out as I go. Yeah, Adam says 20, go to 10. Exactly. You put in.
I remember those commands. Yeah, yeah.
Right. And you would do it by 10. So you would do like, line, like I guess it probably started on line 1 or whatever, but you wouldn't make like line 2, line 3, line 4, because what if you needed to insert a line? So you'd have like line 10, line 20, line 30, and then you had room to insert lines, if I remember correctly. So Dwayne Moss says the Apple II Plus was his first computer. Adam Rice says the family then had an original Mac and then an SE30, and then his first personal Mac was a 2SI. This is also a great question. What was the first computer you sort of like bought for yourself, or that you had as your own computer? Do you guys remember that? And Jerry, what was your first experience with all this? We didn't get your answer yet.
Sure. As we dive into the show, though, put this out to the people listening, people watching, if they'd like to come on and join us. I know we have the capabilities to do something like that and share their thoughts on Apple at 50.
Yeah, so I sent out a Dropbox link. You can find it in your email. You can find it in the Command Control Power channel on Slack. You can find it in your Patreon messages. It lets you upload a video, and then I can play the video live.
You can play these live. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I'm a little bit older than you guys. I don't know if you've noticed that or not, but I've got a few more years on you. So the whole advent of the Apple II, it didn't pass me by, but it was, for the most part, it was definitely marketed as a family computer, and it wasn't something that I encountered at work. When I was initially at work, and I started working for my father's business, which was a tool and die company, we had PC compatibles. We had like a leading edge computer. And then we had an NEC computer with 2 8-inch floppies that made the most horrible noises when this thing was booting up. It would just go,
That was normal back then.
Yeah. It would take like 20 minutes for this thing to boot up. And we did very simple computer-aided machining on it. And then as things evolved, we never actually did anything like that on a Mac. I probably started buying personal Macs for myself for home. But initially what got me into the Macosphere was I was very interested in like music, primarily, not art as much. And there was a computer store in New Haven, not the one we're going to show, that was in Hamden, and they had an Amiga. So I believe my dad bought an Amiga, and I probably co-opted that. I probably brought that to my house because I was already out of college by this point. And Amiga had a lot of vaporware. They really never got off the ground. But then more people started to do like MIDI. MIDI was the big thing back then. And you could get a Mac and you could get a keyboard and you could start to do MIDI stuff. So I can't even imagine what my first Mac Pro was, but it was a Mac Pro. It was probably one of the plastic body ones that sit on the floor where people have made those into cocktail cabinets. Have you seen those?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember my dad, I mean, he's a lovely guy. He's still around, knock on wood. He's 93 this year. And he bought me a Mac, just a regular Mac all in one. What was it called? Before they did any kind of enhancements, before it was a color
Mac Classic, or
before it was a color CRT. It was just like black and white. Right. And he was trying to do me a solid, and I think he got it for me for my birthday, and this is nice. Like I said, I'm an adult, so
that's like a $10,000 birthday present. This is recently, you said, or
no. This is years
your original.
Ago. Yeah, I don't think the Macs were that much money. The all-in-ones were that much money. We're going to get to the prices in a moment, but and I made him return it because I said, oh man, all I do is work with computers during the day, and I don't want to have a Mac at night. Right. But what lit my fire was this ability to do music, and I think I was doing. Like, I think I owned I was like one of the first people in the United States, but I owned an early copy of Finale, which was a notation program for music. And I believe I started using it that way initially. But then we started to get them in at work. And I texted you a receipt that we went to the computer store in Hamden, and we bought a Mac 2VX. And Joe, throw that picture up on the screen if you can.
Here it comes. Yep. This is really interesting. Look at the pricing on this bad boy.
Let's set the year.
Crazy. Yeah.
So this is wow. What year is this? I don't even know. 1989.
Okay, there you go.
And the base price of it wasn't even a VX. It was a 2X with an 80 gig hard drive and 4 megabytes of RAM.
80 meg hard. Is that what you said? 80 meg hard drive.
Oh, I misspoke. I probably said gig. 80 meg hard drive.
That would have been $100,000 back then.
Yeah. No, it didn't exist.
So the base price on that was $5,585.
Yeah, that's serious money.
Wow.
That's Mac Pro pricing right there.
Yeah. And you buy a video card and it's some sort of expansion card and a printer, extended keyboard, and we were out the door for $7,000.
Wow.
Now, I don't know what in 1980.
Sorry, go ahead.
This just happened to be lying around, Sam. This is one of my
so the equivalent. I think you were just going to ask this, Jerry. So the 1989 price of $5,585. The 2026 equivalent would be about $14,730. So that's a lot of scratch, as the kids would say.
Yeah. It's a lot of apples.
That's amazing.
Hand and tool and die.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
$35 for the system prep too. There's probably people out there charging a similar rate these days. But here, $35. Let's say $35.
Yeah, but you declined the CF Care coverage. It looks like.
Yeah, he declined.
That'd be $92 in 2026. Yeah. So I mean, not far off, right? For like a Mac setup. I think if you go to Apple, they'll do it for like $99.
$99.
Yeah.
And so for a little while in the business for the computer-aided manufacturing, we continued. We bought some of the Mac clones. So we bought some power computing computers, mostly price-driven because they were a little bit cheaper. They were supposed to be faster. I remember they had the L2 cache. That was the big selling feature. I only went to one Macworld, and I'm getting ahead of ourselves here, but that was in Boston. And power computing was there, and they got the word on the show floor that the clones were being killed.
Wow.
And that business was done for them.
Oh my God. While they were on the floor there?
Right.
That's insane.
They had a huge exhibit. And then of course, everything started moving away from Mac at that point, because then things started to get really bad in terms of the space. And that's when right before Steve Jobs almost came over and before they bought Next, Apple was just in the toilet. So everybody switched over to PCs for CAD cam work. Yeah.
Wow. What a fun evolution of this whole industry over our lifetimes. We were all, more or less children at the time, whatever your age actually was. I mean, this goes back 50 years for Apple and, 40 years for us or something. And so, to watch this industry develop and grow up over time, I want to turn our attention back to some of the comments in the chat, which are really great. Also sharing one of these submissions that we had from Dwayne Moss, a listener and supporter of the show. And I also want to, what I always think about coming from those early days, these stories you're telling and how things have like evolved. And, one thing that I just find fascinating is the concept of how computer languages have evolved over time. You're talking punch cards like before the Apple, you're talking about punch cards and things and assembly and basic. And so like, there's also this evolution that's happening in language, like in computer programming languages. Now we're in the era of AI where you just tell it what you want it to do. And then it just figures out whatever language it's using underneath the hood, it's able to create like entire, applications for you. We're almost at the point where like AI, the killer app of AI is that it's like a meta app, basically. It's like whatever app you can imagine, it will become that for you. It will basically create that for you. But if you go back to those early days, people were like doing it in their brain and putting it into like a punch card that they would feed into a system and then eventually get an answer back and see if it even worked or if there was an error, and they have to start over. So just imagine that like evolution, how that happened. It's kind of miraculous to me, how that part works. But yeah, going back to the chat here, Adam mentioned that one of his first experiences was they bought the 128K Mac and then upgraded it to 512K, which then it became what's called a fat Mac. You've probably heard that term before, but that was the term of trade with this upgraded Mac with this extra memory, which was all of 0.5 megabyte. It's like mind blowing, like that. We've come so far, even in terms of the evolution of like memory usage and things. This is a great comment I wanted to highlight because this is very similar for me. Actually, I'm not sure. I don't recognize the handle here, but Managing Macs says the Mac Classic first use was HyperCard stacks in school, middle school in the early 90s. Same for me. Being turned on to HyperCard was like, oh, wow, this is cool. Like I can make things. Again, this is what everybody's discovering with AI now is like you can make apps, and even, people got excited about the web for the same reason and about the iPhone for the same reason. But these had a much higher barrier to entry than even HyperCard back in the day. HyperCard was like, you can get a stack that someone would, copy onto a floppy disk for you, and you open it up and it's a thing. It does a thing. It's an application practically, or it's it could be flashcards like to study. It could be a presentation about something to help you learn something. It could be a game. It could be like anything you can imagine. You could create in HyperCard. And the amazing part, like the web, was it was discoverable. On the web, you can do view source and you could see like, oh, I see how they're doing that, or they're calling this library or whatever. HyperCard, you could go in and just view the, oh man, what did they call it? Well, HyperTalk, I think, was the language. And I'm trying to remember what they called the, like, you could view the source essentially and see how it did what it was doing. And that's basically how I learned how to program with HyperCard. And that was what got me that's what created the nerd in me, was like HyperCard. You could just make computers do what you wanted.
The great thing about HyperCard too was I used to get these pre-made CD-ROMs with shareware on there, and there were these pre-made HyperCard stacks, and that was probably my first glimpse into what they were. They could be highly immersive. Some of these ones that sort of captured your imagination, and it could have been a game, and it sort of like took you around. And it sounds so primitive and simple, but at the same time, it was incredibly engaging and really drew you in. Totally. Joe, you were mentioning that Dwayne had something to share that you.
Yeah. Let's throw this up on the stage here.
I am Dwayne Moss, and happy to share some of my memories over the years with Apple. Kind of interestingly enough, Paul McCartney played last night at Apple Park, which would have been a great thing to see.
Nice.
Very cool. It reminded me of when I was with Apple in the 80s at the sales conference. The first sales conference I went to, we actually had Huey Lewis and the News play right after, I think it was Back to the Future came out. And then after that, the next year at the sales conference, we actually had Grace Slick and Starship play. And
That's awesome.
I was right next to the stage watching Grace Slick, which was pretty amazing because there were only about, maybe 800, 1,000 people there. So it wasn't like being at a big concert. So it was really cool. But then the other thing that was kind of cool that I got to take part in was when Steve Jobs introduced the iPod at Town Hall. They had a small theater, maybe sat about 200, 300, called Town Hall and aisle 5. But I was there for an executive briefing, which they held directly upstairs. And I had heard the announcement was coming the next day, so I stayed around for an extra day instead of flying back to Chicago right away. And they had, he introduced the iPod, and that was one of the things that finally got Apple on the recovery track.
Yeah.
But kind of amazingly, about 4 months after that, I got laid off for the third time at Apple. I had a weird career I was hired 3 times by Apple and let go 3 times.
Wow, they couldn't decide.
When they asked me back for the 4th time, my wife said no. So it's an interesting company, great company. I would never trade my experience with it.
Right.
Although it was kind of funny when I first took the job. My dad said, "You're giving up your engineering to go work for a hippie company in California," and that was in 1984. So thanks for letting me participate. Bye.
That's really cool. Yeah, thanks,
Awesome,
Dwayne, for sending that in. That's yeah, really awesome. Really, really cool. Yeah, I mean Sam, you and I were out aisle 5 there, Infinite Loop Building 5, the Apple Town Hall. The history in there was almost palpable. I mean, they had to point it out. I didn't realize until a couple of the presenters mentioned it. But yeah, that's where the iPod was originally. I mean,
in
that theater, it's like a humble, it's like like Dwayne said, it's like a small space, and now they do these big grand keynotes and things, but that was where the iPod, was released, and what a momentous occasion.
I love those intimate little theaters that they have there, where it's like you feel like you're really part of it, when you're there, and I can imagine seeing the iPod announced there is like insane.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. I mean, do you think like people knew what was happening in that moment? When it's like, what did it say? 10,000 songs in your pocket, or maybe it was 1,000 songs in your pocket in the early days. I don't remember. Forget which.
Whichever one you would have said, I would have believed, because I was like,
right,
songs. That's right.
Yeah,
that's true.
And like Dwayne said, that really was a turning point. I mean, at that point in time was more or less when I got started in this business. Before I started my company, right around the iPod was when I was starting in this field, working for an Apple specialist. And everybody back then called it like the iPod company, the iPod store. It's like Apple. They don't care who makes it. It's just the iPod. Everybody knew about the iPod. And of course, when the iPhone came out, that was a different level as well. But
I don't think that.
Go ahead, Jerry.
No, go ahead, Sam, please.
Well, I was just thinking about this because, like, as you said, because they were known as the iPod company in a lot of ways, like that was one of the things. That was my early days of consulting as well. And it felt like, people would actually buy a Mac so that they could sync their iPod. And like they started to buy the Mac products so that they could work with their accessory products.
Right.
And that started to happen little by little.
Right. They call it the Halo. There you go, Jerry. Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that I don't think the iPod itself out of the gate was a big hit. It only worked on FireWire 400, by the way. I had one. It was 5 gigs, and I used to use it. I won't even bring it up, but I used to teach some athletic classes. Sam and Joe know about this.
Oh, we know. Yeah.
And I would use it in those classes to serve up the music and hook it into the sound system. So utilitarianly, it was very effective to do that. And it was amazing. But at the same time, it didn't get a lot of traction. And one of the things that Pogue said in his book, he got a rare interview with Scott Forstall, who hasn't really talked to anyone since he left Apple. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that really gave the iPod traction was when Steve agreed to make it for Windows. And that was the inflection point where the iPod then started to experience that halo effect, where people had such a great experience using the iPod that they wanted to get a Mac to even do more with it. So that, that was, and also they say that the gumdrop, for lack of a better word, the multicolored Macs put them back on the map. Sure. And that's really what escalated sales. So sales numbers for those gumdrop Macs were huge during the holiday season.
Yep. Yeah, I had in high school they had it was called the iMac DV, digital video. That was a thing, and it was the iMac like gumdrop style, but it was like this really cool slate gray color. It had a built-in FireWire 400 ports, I think 2 of them. And you could therefore connect a digital video camera. And there were certain cameras, I think Canon made some of the early ones that had a FireWire 400 port built in. And so you could have this whole video, editing workflow right on your home computer for relatively low barrier to entry. That was one of my favorite things in high school, was being able to like make videos, and it was all based on a Mac, of course. My other favorite thing in high school was I had a radio show. Imagine that. Here I am doing a podcast for how many years has it been, guys? I don't know, almost 13. But my early experience with this was actually a high school radio station at my high school. Nothing Apple related in that world really, but the fact that, I guess the lesson is like, it goes to show you that when technology can be presented to kids and integrated like that, it can, it can lead to a lot of like, it's like a natural way to encourage learning, who wants to like read a book when you can make a movie or get on the radio? Like that's an exciting way to learn, and Apple knew that in those early days. And again, for me, it goes right back to HyperCard. Not to go back to this topic, but Adam does confirm it's the same hyper as an HTML, right? Hypertext markup language. HyperTalk was the HyperCard, programming language. Dwayne Moss also shared some more here in the chat that he got to meet Bill Atkinson when he picked him up at the Chicago airport when he came to talk to the local Mac user group there. So Bill Atkinson created HyperCard. I mean, these were the days when like a single person could create an entire, this still happens, but like an entire app like that. And even including the interface, the design, the programming, everything from top to bottom. And then like millions of people went out and used it and built their own things from it. So what he's a hero of mine, Bill Atkinson. What a cool story that he was able to create. He created like a ton of stuff. Didn't he create like Mac Paint as well or something? Like he was so prolific, that guy. Yeah, really impressive.
You mentioned making your own movie. That was such a powerful moment when Steve Jobs did the presentation talking about the digital hub. And once people saw that they could use iMovie and they could use iTunes, and they could incorporate the music. I mean, some of those keynotes, in terms of capturing people's imagination and wanting them, if they didn't have a Mac, wanting to go out and buy a new one or buy a, or associate themselves with a brand. Just really, really pivotal moments. It sounds so it's so easy. We pick up our phone and we can create a movie now and we can add music to it. But back then it was a little bit harder.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah,
man. I mean, like going forward in time, like I remember iDVD Studio Pro, and making and editing things that way, and building a disc out of it, and it was like super cool when you could do that.
It was really cool. You could make a menu, you pop the disc in and it gives you like this splash screen and like animated menu and choices like, do you want to play this video or this video? Just like a home DVD had, and you could do that, like you said, just in your home, on your home computer. And I helped clients with that in those early days. People loved the fact that they could do that, and they felt very empowered that they were doing it, even if they needed a little help, like from people like us in those days,
I mean, it was my natural progression from when I was making mixtapes back in high school. That was like my biggest thing. And then like, going to something, I was making mixed movies, so to speak, on iDVD Studio Pro. So it brings back some good memories.
That's a good point too, is like CDR, you could do it with a CD. So, I like, I've been with my wife now for about 20 years this year, since we first got together. And one of the first gift I gave her was like a 3 CD set, that I made of like some of my favorite music, that was like, a way that we could connect. And I made not only, you burn the discs obviously, but like, using Photoshop to make like a cover and lay out all the tracks and things on there. And like, that was really fun. And like you said, I mean, it was tapes before that. You'd record like off the radio or something, or maybe you had a dual deck, system. You could record from one tape to the other and make those mixtapes. Yeah, nice. And then you'd have, the evolution to CDR with like full quality. I mean, you could make it out of MP3s or AIFF or whatever.
Question is, how did you get those songs for CD? There were a couple of options.
I probably owned a lot of those discs, honestly, and imported them into. I mean, that was the other really cool thing is you stick a disc in your Mac and you import all the tracks right into iTunes, and it uses the Grace Note music database and finds the tracks and it's
rip and burn.
Exactly. Yeah.
But before that, of course, there was Sound Jam before iTunes.
Yeah,
which is what the company which Apple bought and became iTunes. That's right. Yeah, but we were all doing our burning. It was in the early days, you only could burn it. Remember one time the speed. So if you had a 50-minute CDR, you had to sit there for 50 minutes and wait for it to complete. You didn't have to sit there, but and then it was always mind blowing that you could do it at 4 times or 6 times or 8 times the speed. Yeah. I remember we were doing a little bit of music, and I think this was probably around 1989 in New York City. And we did a recording and they had a CDR and they said, yeah, we can make you one to take with you, but it would be $400 for that CDR.
Wow.
Just because they must have spent thousands for this CDR burner back in the day.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I wish I wish I brought up. I have like a Christmas CD I used to make for the family. I have it with the Photoshop cover and everything. I should have thought to bring it in here as a show and tell. I had to go find it.
Does anybody remember the sound that would play when the disc was finished burning?
I remember like the plutonium looking symbol.
Yeah, that was a cool one. Yep, exactly.
A sound. You got it queued up or what?
I'm trying. I was scrambling here. I was trying. So let's see if anybody in the chat gets it. So it's interesting because here. Let's see. Is this it? Wasn't that it? You guys hear that? Oh shoot. Okay. Let me see. Is it playing in my AirPods?
Was that it?
Yeah. Wasn't that it? Okay, I don't know if you guys can hear that. So
low tech.
Banging the mic with his iPhone.
I'm pretty. Whoops. I'm pretty sure it's the tritone sound. So if you go on your iPhone default alerts, your iPhone settings, sounds, default alerts, it's called tritone. I'm pretty sure that was the sound that whatever iTunes made, I guess, when the disc finished burning, which became the like sound of a voicemail, I think, or I could be misremembering this whole thing, but it was used in like on the first iPhone as a very common sound effect, and it started off as like the disc burning sound. I could have that totally wrong, but that's my recollection.
Well, there was I forget which order it occurred in, but like something similar. I think when you plugged in your iPod or whatever, it made this sound that was the same exact sound that they used in Minority Report, the Tom Cruise movie.
Oh, really?
And I don't know which one happened first, to be honest with you, but it is the same. Like I verified it online a while ago. It was the same exact sound. I don't remember who took it from who.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Well, here's another question. So besides, we've covered, what were some of your early experiences with the Mac and what were some of those early, computers, like your first computer. What is the first computer you guys bought for your business? Like when you started doing this for a living, do you remember your first computer?
Well, I remember my first adult computer, which I was just getting started. So it wasn't really my like business yet. I was kind of working in the field, but it was an iBook G3 in the turquoise color with the handles and everything that you could, but that was the one, right? With you can hold
G3. Yeah.
The toilet seat.
Toilet seat, clamshell. Yep.
Yeah, clamshell. And I remember because I bought it. I didn't have the money, so I bought it used on eBay from someone that had it for just a few months. So I got a little bit of a discount on it. But
Nice.
I was so proud of that thing. I used to, carry around. It was the coolest thing I ever owned.
That was really cool. Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Jerry? What was your first, professional Mac?
So we're talking for MacWorks, it was back in 2007. So it was a PowerBook G4 15-inch. Yeah.
Same for me. Yep. Adam Rice says he's got the Tangerine iBook right there. Yeah, those were great colors. I mean, people are comparing now with the Neo coming in these fancy colors. I mean, they're not as bright and as these were back in the day, the Bondi blue ones and the tangerine and whatever the colors were. They're a little bit more muted compared to those, but it is nice that Apple's experimenting more with color the last few years. This was Adam also brings up this was a fun experience too. That was the first Mac with Wi-Fi, and maybe I think that's why Adam's bringing this up. But the airport card was like the original airport. What was the newer one? Airport Extreme was the newer one, I think. So these iBooks had the option for Wi-Fi. So imagine a laptop that did not have Wi-Fi built in. Like, what is the point? Like, I'm carrying this computer around. Like, I'm not going to connect to anything. I just have a computer with me. Like, what? These days, if you don't have internet, like, nobody sits down and opens their computer and just like opens Word and starts writing. Okay, some writers do, right? But back then, like, the default laptop had no Wi-Fi, and you could, like, it was an option. And so I remember some of my first experiences were working for an Apple specialist. People would upgrade to Wi-Fi. Like, you'd add an airport card in these machines, or the airport would die and you'd have to replace it. Like, it was this little PCM card, right? That goes under the keyboard.
Right.
But yeah. Adam points out that they demoed this by Steve had to like put a hula hoop around the iBook to prove that there were no wires. Like, it was a magic trick.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah, and as Joe mentioned, to do the upgrade, the keyboard popped off of all things.
Yeah,
and underneath you'd
had two levers, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
and you'd stick the card in the slot.
Yep.
By the way, if anybody is listening and you've got any pictures you'd like to share, it doesn't have to be a video. Throw them in that folder and we'll put them up on the screen.
Yeah, pictures as well. Exactly. The Dropbox link is now in the chat here on the live stream as well. And Dwayne says he used to install a lot of modems in Macintosh Duos. That's a good point. You could use a modem and you could dial out if you just have a phone line. You plug into the phone line and you could get online that way. Use one of your 1,000 free hours from AOL and you're off and running. So yeah, it's man, it's wild. Isn't it crazy though, just to think about this evolution of how, like, the state of the art back then was just having a computer at all,
right.
Having a laptop at all was just an amazing thing. And again, with HyperCard, that quote unquote development environment was all self-contained. There's no, you're not calling frameworks online. You're not logging into, an IDE that's like, tied into GitHub or something like that. You're just opening HyperCard and you're just coding from memory. Maybe you've got a book. I had some books, you could look and see how to do things in a printed book. So yeah, you could be totally offline and still do really interesting things, without just having the internet be an assumption that it's always there. We've come a long way for sure. I don't know if it's an improvement or not, but here we are.
Well, it depends on what you're talking about in terms of improvements, but
yeah,
I was just looking back at, like, in my photos library to see what I had too of my own. And it's funny because I have some older pictures, but it's like, I had my daughter helping me take apart MacBook Pros and putting hard drives in them and stuff. I don't have quite as old as I wanted, but now that I'm looking, I'm like, oh man, I remember that. You start looking and going down memory lane. Totally.
Yeah. It's you just reminded me to look in my own photo library from that. I was at the Mac World when the iPhone was introduced, and they had, like, I think 2 on display in these, like, columns, like these they were like plexiglass or something, like, so you couldn't get close to it. Like, you get close to it, but you couldn't touch the thing. You couldn't see. I mean, but it was just pure magic to see this thing in person before it was like 6 months before it came out or whatever. Yeah, that was a really interesting time to be around in this world of Apple. It was pretty wild.
I got
My
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, my first Mac was the also like Jerry, the PowerBook G4. Mine was the 12-inch PowerBook. What a great machine that was. The just compact form factor, really solid computer. Just like my daily driver for years, until I got the very first MacBook Air. I remember I was there also when that Steve pulled it out of the manila envelope. It fit inside there. Didn't know there was a computer in there because it was like had that tapered, still that tapered design, and it was so thin. It used, I think, the what is it, the smaller hard drives, like 1.8 inch, I want to say, like hard drive, which was really slow. That was the bottleneck in the whole thing. Or you could upgrade to an SSD for like $500, and it was like all of 128 gigs or something, or maybe 64 gigs. It was, you could get an SSD, but it was really, really expensive. But yeah, those were some really cool designs. Those two, I think, were two of my favorites of all time, probably.
Yeah, someone actually he mentioned it on, he was doing, Paul Thoreau is his name. He's a Windows PC specialist, and he did a show for years with Leo Laporte. And he had mentioned that he was going to be selling some of his stuff. And I was like one of the first to listen to the podcast. And I went to his website, and he had listed a PowerBook, just like you had, the 12-inch, Joe. And yeah. It was a very reasonable price. He sent it to me. I think he's up in Massachusetts. He sent it to me, purchased it from him through PayPal, and it arrived, and it had all the accessories. It was like almost fresh out of the box. He barely even used it, barely touched it. So I used it as a side computer for a number of years. And there was something, I agree with you, there was something really, really seductive and special about that 12-inch form factor of that particular machine, the PowerBook. And so, yeah, I don't think any of the 13s really captured the personalization that you kind of felt with the 12-inch. There was something really great about it. And I finally sold it for a fairly decent price on eBay, because it just exceeded its usefulness. But it was a special computer. I agree.
Yeah. What about you, Sam? Do you have any favorites out there that you can think about, like some of your favorite Macs of all time?
I gotta say that iBook, the clamshell, was actually, it had such an impact on me just when I took it out of the eBay box. But when I took it out, I was just like, this is so freaking amazing. And like, I think of the years forward, and I had a PowerBook G4 as well, and I had other models along the way, but nothing, I don't think anything made as much of an impact on me as that one did, because it was my first like purchased on my own thing as well. It wasn't like a business purchase. It was like I spent my own money, what I had, to get that used model just to have my hands on an Apple product.
Totally. That's very meaningful when it's your own hard-earned money. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Crazy times back then.
Yeah, really, really, really crazy times. Yeah, I mean, here's I don't know. I have a couple of photos from those days. I wonder if I can share some of these. Interesting. There's probably you may recognize some colleagues in this. In these early. I mean, this is wild to me. Just how they. Here's one I'll try and share. Let's see here. Just to prove that I was really there, so you guys believe that I was really there. Let's see. Yeah, here's one. I mean, these aren't particularly great photos. This is me on my, I don't even know what camera I would have had at the time, but you can see I'm sharing the photo of, again, as I described it, there's this like thick plexiglass sort of like, column shaped, enclosure that, had this like well lit, little iPhone in it with a dock connector at the bottom, right? That was the dock connector back then.
Yeah.
I was playing some video loop and things like that, but it was just, it was mobbed. I mean, this was at Macworld. You can see some of the camera phones, as we called them back then, that are in the photo. Somebody's got a Razor flip phone, and there's a little who makes that? Maybe Samsung back then.
Looked like a
Another little,
Nokia or something.
maybe a Nokia, like candy bar style phone, as they called it. Taking these, what I'm trying to remember. I probably had a Palm Trio at the time, and I might have I don't know if I carried around an actual digital camera. Yeah, Motorola, someone said in the chat. So
You didn't take that with a quick take, Joe? The Apple
oh no,
quick
that's a
take?
good reference though. Good reference, the quick take. I used one of those also in high school, early days with digital, quote unquote, digital photography. Yeah. Wild times, but yeah. And Jerry, you said you got to one Macworld. That was the one and only that you had been to?
The one and only. I think they only had one in Boston. Only
Oh,
one,
right.
or
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah, it was earlier in the in the
But it was kind
timeline
of
when they did
sad.
that.
It didn't quite
Yeah.
have any of the luster that you would imagine that you would have gotten it at some of these other Macworlds, or at least from what I imagine from reading Macworld magazine. It
Yeah.
it was pretty low key.
Yeah. Oh wow, someone one of you guys shared an interesting photo here.
Yeah,
in
I
our
was checking to see if it was okay to post or not.
private chat. Yeah, it looks okay to post. So what is the backstory? Can you remind me of the backstory
Yeah,
of this
Derry
photo,
can
Sam?
remind you. Jerry, do you
Yeah.
remember this? This was at my house, by the way.
Yes. Yeah,
This
I
was
thought it was at your house, Sam. I was trying to remember like what the context was. Jerry, you must have brought this to Sam's house. It was probably the
Yes.
last time we saw you in
You used to
person.
have your
Yeah.
Mac museum in your office.
That's right. Yeah.
And Jerry, I had a party. You guys came, and Jerry
Yep.
brought you the Newton.
That's
For
right.
for the listeners at home, we're looking at a picture of young Joe here,
Even younger Joe, yeah.
clean shaven Joe holding a Newton. And I got this from a client who passed away, and I was hired, didn't know this client at all. I was hired to clean out the house and take all the objectionable material off of his computers, because he was
All the objectionable material.
yeah,
Nice.
he was a professor at Yale. He had something like a double professorship. And so I was hired by his mother. He had an untimely passing. And my job was to just parse through days and days and days of hard drives to just remove objectionable material.
Crazy.
And she said, anything you see here that you want. And the place was a mess.
Wow.
I mean, it wasn't dirty, but it was just like, it was cluttered. It was like a hoarding kind of scene without the dirt. And so this was just lying in on some desk somewhere. And then, I found a couple of the components. I think there was a case that came with it and a stylus. So
yeah, you had all the accessories there. Yep. That was very cool. Thank you again for that gift. That was, I don't think I had ever used one of those before, but of course, I remember like reading about it in Wired magazine,
right. Neither had
days.
I had never touched one in person either.
It was really cool. I mean, it was obviously way ahead of its time, as everybody knows, but the people who got into it, some people really got into it, and you had, you could send data over like infrared and stuff, and you could, add a PCM card for a I don't know, dial-up connection or something. I mean, it could do all kinds of crazy stuff.
There's a whole community of people who work on these, and you can do a lot more these days with a Newton. You can't quite get it to where you need it to go. It can get on the internet, but it's you have to be really patient. But if you did find one of these, you could get it working again. And there's lots of people that support them. And this was one of John Scully's projects.
Yeah.
And this is one of the very first things that Steve Jobs killed once he became CEO. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Actually,
Interim CEO, I should say.
The I CEO, exactly. Everything was I back then. As long as you're taking a trip down memory lane here, without context, do you guys have any guesses as to who this is, who this little boy is?
Well, I have context, so I'm not going to say.
Okay, you have context. So this was shared by Adam Rice, longtime listener and fan of the show, and friend of the show and supporter. This is an awesome photo. This is Adam, many years ago. And this is, let's see, did he say using his Mac in 1987 or 88? He was 13 years old. Let's see what Mac that looks like. I had one of these in my Mac museum at one point. That's either the SE30 or, maybe it was like a Mac Classic or something. What did they call it? What was the first Mac? Was it just called Macintosh or like Macintosh 1 or something like that? Then I guess there was a Mac 2. I don't know.
Might have just been called Macintosh, right? Yeah,
probably. I would think, yeah, in those days before there was anything else, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's it's wild, man. Yeah, this stuff, once a nerd, always a nerd. It's like we all, I'm sure, have these photos of us being really into computers in those early days, and it's no surprise we ended up in the profession that we're in, right, at this point. So,
sure.
Yeah. Did you guys have people telling you, like, I remember my aunt when I was probably that age, I was probably 13 or 14 or something, and my aunt was saying, you should do something with computers. It's like. And I was like rolling my eyes, like, what do I know about computers? Like, I mean, I don't know. I have a bunch of friends who are much smarter than I am and know way more than I do about computers. Like, what do you mean do something with computers? Like scoffing, as a, sarcastic 13-year-old or whatever. And, she was absolutely right. Like I did something with computers. I'm still doing it. So it's funny that sometimes people see you better than you can see yourself. Right. But did you have any early, what were your early influences like guiding you into this kind of field? Do you guys have any stories about that?
I'm curious about Jerry's because you came from a different profession, like,
yeah.
You want to share anything there, Jerry?
Yeah, sure. So the tool and die business kind of ran its course. When it started to fade was probably 2006, 2007. It was a lot more manufacturing was being done offshore. Initially, everybody thought everything would go to Mexico and the NAFTA treaty. And Ross Perot called it the giant sucking sound of all the manufacturing going to Mexico. But what really ate everybody's lunch was China back in those days, because it used to be like if you would get precision tooling from China, China could not manufacture the steel to the grade that we would get it here in the United States. And that quickly changed. And all of a sudden, China was eating everybody's lunch in the terms of the tooling and manufacturing. So there was rapid tooling going on. So in other words, let's say Apple needed a prototype, they would go to a local tooling shop and they would be able to create let's say a housing for a new product. But we're talking about, for long-term production, it was just going offshore. So the business kind of ran its course. But during that time period, we had different types of computers. We had Macs and we had PCs, and we did networking. We had mentioned on another show how we had used the Farallon connectors and the phone net connectors to get these things integrated, and basically doing these, they were called DNC dumps, direct numeric controlled dumps of data to these CNC machines. So it was post punch tape, post cards. By the way, you mentioned the punch cards.
Yeah.
When I was in grammar school, and some people listening, Dwayne probably remembers this. I grew up in Newtown, so I went to Sandy Hook School, which has obviously become very notorious.
Yeah.
And kids, and IBM had a big presence in Southbury, Connecticut. So that was very close to Newtown. And their dads would bring home these unused punch cards or used punch cards that they were throwing away. And we used to make these, like, we would get out a stapler, you make sort of a half circle by bending the punch card, you'd staple it, and you keep on working your way around. You'd make this wreath out of punch cards.
Oh, sure.
And then you would spray paint it in gold or silver and put a bow on it. And those were our like projects in like first grade,
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah. So we would do all this DNC, back to the shop. We would do all this stuff. And so the business was folding, and I didn't know what I was going to do with myself. I was kind of like, well, how old was I then? I was probably in my 40s, my early 40s. And I began to really love Macs at that point. So then I was buying Macs for myself and using them in music, and just always would go on these, they weren't even like message boards, but I would go on these servers. One was called Hotline, that would serve up illegal software, and I'd be downloading illegal software. Like
some things never change.
Wow. No. the betas of like Photoshop, and Photoshop was passed around a lot. But then there was like this one website I went into, and I was getting like release candidates, RCs or golden masters from Apple, whoever was sharing them out. So they would be coming out with like System 7, and I would download System 7 before it was released. And
see, some things never change.
Yeah.
We're still on the cutting edge. Yeah.
And this is before the days of preemptive multitasking. So you would be halfway into an install or during a download of like some gigantic thing on a dial-up modem, some gigantic installation of the macOS pre-release, and your computer would just lock up. And then you'd have to do like a hard shutdown, a hard reboot, and start over again. It was the worst. So I was doing stuff like that. So I really had an affinity for wanting to work with Macs. So not more than a street over. Look, Adam Rice says, I ran a hotline server in college for hip hop MP3s. That was such a great app. Yeah. Hotline was great. There were a number of them for music sharing. People mostly remember
LimeWire, probably.
No, not LimeWire, the big one.
BitTorrent? Or
no.
For downloading music?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh, Napster.
Napster. Exactly. Yeah. Most people remember Napster, but like Adam said, Hotwire was good, or Hotwire, LimeWire.
Hotline. Yeah.
Hotline. Yeah. Sorry. Yep. No.
Got you off track, Jerry. Sorry.
Yeah. So not more than one street over in Woodbridge, Connecticut. It's a guy you met in your early days of your career, guys. I think you met him on a plane or going out to some Apple event. He was an Apple certified consultant. And he took me out one day. And I don't know what made me reach out to him or even think about doing this, but maybe I looked online about how to become, somehow involved with Apple. And lo and behold, I don't think they had a consultant's locator. This guy was like literally the next street over from where we were located, where the shop was located. And so he said, yeah, come out with me, for the day. And I went out with, what was that guy's name?
I remember the story, but I can't remember who this was. Yeah.
I can't come up with him, but he was a great asset for me. And I said, well, what about certifications? He's like, you don't need certifications. Just go out there and start doing it. Right. But I did need a certification. And I believe I used Sam's company to take my first test to become, support specialist on the very early days.
Did you take it at like Danbury Airport at that spot?
I went to the place in Shelton, the testing center in Shelton. Yeah.
There's like a testing center at a local regional airport. like you have a plane flying overhead and you go in and take your application.
Right. Oh, that's funny. I'm trying to remember the guy's name from CompUSA who kind of encouraged me along the same lines. Although he said, join the Apple Consultants Network. Whereas your guy gave you advice of like, don't worry about certifications.
Don't worry about it. You don't need those stinking certification.
Yeah. That's wild. Wow.
But I felt like an imposter unless I had something. Yes. And I remember one of my earliest clients was this company. It was a design company, and they had an Xserve, and they had all the workstations logging remotely into the Xserve. Mm-hmm. What would you have called that back in the day?
Like terminal services server?
Yeah, not like remote desktop, but almost like that, Yeah. And they hired me because they had problems, and I had no idea what I was doing.
Love those days.
That's a big job to just walk into, like with no,
oh my God,
institutional knowledge there. But you mentioned feeling like an imposter. Imposter syndrome is very real, like, as a phenomenon. And I mean, I remember like talking myself out of it, like, I'm like 10 years in, probably even more than that, and still getting those calls where I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to help this person. Like, I haven't dealt with this one thing before, or like, what do I know? And like imposter syndrome affects even, you could be doing this for 10 years and still suffer from that. But like you said, you get a certification or some kind of paper that says, well, at least you passed this test. Like,
yes.
You're not brand
you can memorize real good.
Totally agreeing. Yeah. Deploy Studio Server. Was that it, Jerry? This is the comment in the chat here.
No.
John?
I was using Deploy Studio much, much later with an educational institution. And that was, that was great. I was able to get around that. I mean, this was just very early days, I guess 10.2 or something like that, maybe even.
Okay. Yep. here's we have some more being shared here, and let's see. So I'll share this one from Dwayne again. This is a server room situation. So I was actually going to ask this question, and he answered it already. So you'll see in this image, Dwayne says, "Sorry, I'm scrolling. I sound like
I'm
public
clicking.
radio guy here." Yeah. So sorry, I missed this. The comment where Dwayne said what this was. Oh, picture of my server room in 2002. At the bottom right, I mean, you guys probably saw the chat already, but my first question was, what the heck is that thing? In the bottom right of this photo, can't even describe it. I mean, it's basically like a double wide, like Power Mac G3 looking thing. So this is the Apple Workgroup server, and it ran AIX. And I totally like AIX. I know I've heard this before, but I don't remember what that even was. So this is like a very specialty piece of equipment from Apple, precursor to basically like you're describing, Jerry, the Xserve. Really interesting, like snapshot in time of, some of the rooms we all probably walked into at one point in our consulting history. But this is, I mean, for the time, this would have been a pretty sophisticated setup.
I've never seen that piece of equipment before. How about you, Sam?
No, I've not either. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, pretty amazing here. Here's another image that was
you got
shared.
the trash can Mac right below it if you saw it. I don't know if you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Let's go back to that. Let's see. Hold on.
That was a bad joke. Forget it.
Oh yeah, it's an actual trash can for those of you listening and not watching. Yeah, good point. It's exactly the same size as that. Hey, Power Mac. Or what do you call it? Mac Pro. May it rest in peace. Huh? That's probably not a shock that they discontinued that, but right on the cusp of their 50th anniversary, Apple doesn't make a Mac Pro anymore. Here's an image.
Are these also from Dwayne?
No, this one's mine actually.
Yeah, I was wondering who shared this. You want to talk about this one, Sam?
But this was actually just a training center. I can't remember if it was down in Virginia or somewhere like that, where I was doing a training, and in the very next room there was just like a dusty big room full of Mac equipment over the years, and I happened to snap this shot of an Apple II, and I can't read what that other guy is.
Oh yeah, that is an early. Did they call it? I think it was a Macintosh Portable, right?
Maybe that was the name.
Is that what they called it? Someone mentioned this in the chat earlier. We didn't highlight it, but it had like a lead acid battery in it. That was the battery technology of the time, and it probably could give you a good hour of runtime or something. But imagine carrying that honking beast around with you. With what is the screen? It's like a 8-inch screen or something like that. It's grayscale, or maybe it was just black and white. But
I think it was grayscale. Yeah, it's crazy though.
Wild.
Well, it's not a CRT. It's a liquid crystal kind of thing, right?
Actually, that's a good point. That would have been a very early liquid crystal screen.
Yeah,
like an Etch-a-Sketch, man.
Yeah. What was that? There was a movie. Oh man, I watched this movie growing up, and it was something like it was like a Christmas movie. And the joke was that Santa made a portable record player for the kids that asked for it. I can't remember. I wish I could remember which movie this was, but and it always reminded me of this, like the idea of a portable record player, where like you can't like listen to a record while you're like moving around, because it's just
you can listen to Discman,
but yeah, exactly, a Discman. But remember, it had like the buffer, so because it would skip, so it had to actually read ahead and like buffer the with the Discman. But this Macintosh Portable always reminded me of this idea of like a portable record player or something. It's like the technology is just it's a mismatch, what technology exists versus what you actually want. But people had them, and I guess it was a real thing. That's a pretty cool poster in the background too. The iMac banner there in the background.
Yeah, I took a few pictures of that room because it was fascinating to me. It was just like all of this stuff from history, and like I have a poster of the next big and small things from Apple. It's a little blurry, but it has Yao Ming, the famous like basketball player, and it has Mini Me from Austin Powers. I forget his real name, like showing the difference in the two different MacBooks. It's pretty funny, actually.
Apple's always been pretty clever with their advertising with that stuff. That's a good example of that. And then here's another one from Dwayne, just like an old server room, which is comprised of like Oh man, what were those? The graphite Power Mac G4, I think, and then the oh, I used to know what all these were called. How about the mirror drive door machine? When was the last time you
Yeah.
heard somebody say mirrored drive door?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that was a G4 also, right? I think
It
those
was
were
a
both
G4.
Yes.
in
Yes.
this
Yeah.
photo, both G4s. Yep. But yeah, like two of them are laying on their side there. It's this stuff brings back memories. Used to see
Well,
all this kinds of stuff.
that was the problem. It was the painful move to the G5 that
Yeah.
never, Motorola with their processor just kind of
Yeah.
like boxed Apple in, and that was like it was the final nails in the coffin. And then this whole move to Intel was such a surprise for everybody. You want to talk about just getting the doors blown off. I mean, in terms of its announcement.
Yeah, totally. Well, this is a good maybe transition point here. We're going to keep recording. We're going to keep rolling, and I think we'll put like an edit point here. I'll tease a couple of things. So Jerry just brought up this concept of like moving from IBM Power PC, architecture to Intel. We then went through a transition from Intel, obviously, to Apple Silicon, and we're kind of in that same, parallel phase here. I also want to tease a prompt here for the second half of the show. What is the first keyboard shortcut that you guys learned? And I have a good answer for this one. So when part 2 airs, you will hear the answer to those questions and more. And I don't know, Jerry, I'm trying to vamp here a little bit with a little bit of an edit point for you, but how about we just thank everybody for listening to part 1 of our special focus on Apple's 50th anniversary. And we hope you'll continue listening and check out part 2 coming soon. So moving back into the show, thanks everybody for listening to Command Control Power. We are doing our live stream special for Apple's 50th anniversary. As we record, it's April 1st, April Fool's Day. This is not a joke. We are really here. This is really happening. And we are talking about the 50th anniversary of Apple. We talked in part 1 about some of our early experiences with computers, some of our experiences with, what was our first Apple computer? What was our first experience with the Mac? What was our first professional Mac? And I had a question at the end of part 1. What was the first keyboard shortcut you learned? You guys may not be surprised to learn what the first keyboard shortcut I learned was. In fact, it was referenced by a client on the phone earlier today. And she has no idea that we do a podcast. She has no idea that I don't. Yeah, exactly. I don't tell clients we do a podcast, so I don't typically promote that. And I don't think she knew it was Apple's 50th anniversary. There's no reason for her to mention this, but and I will also say that no client ever mentions this keyboard shortcut. I don't know if it's come up once in 22 years of doing this. I might have to tell them this keyboard shortcut. But this client had an issue where she was on location, photographer client. She was doing a photography shoot. She had her client there. The whole team's assembled, and she was on the very last image. She's staging this shot or whatever, and she didn't have power nearby, so she's on her MacBook Pro. I think it's an M3 Pro, and it's running out of power. She's at 10%. She's at 5%. She's at 3%. And she calls me in a panic because the computer died. She didn't have power nearby. So, she should have had power. And I'm going to send her a battery backup recommendation in case this happens again. But she called me in a panic because the computer, she heard it go to like high fans and like it locked up and it shut down. I mean, basically it just ran out of power, but she was in the middle of all this stuff and she was worried that she lost everything. And then it wouldn't turn back on. And she said, I plugged it in. I tried turning it on. I said, you sometimes have to wait a little while. And she said, well, I waited 10 minutes, but I was eating lunch, so I waited 10 minutes. I said, that may not be long enough. You may have to wait a little bit longer. Sure enough, she let it go. She let it, she waited a little bit longer. But she was telling me as she's trying all these different things, she says, I even tried that keyboard shortcut. What is it called? Command Control Power. Is exactly what she said to me. So if anybody wants to dispute the proper order of this keyboard shortcut, because this came up on Daring Fireball recently, and a few people sounded off about the proper order of how to write the shortcut out. Right? I mean, it's on. Well, it's not on my shirt. It's on Jerry's shirt. The order of the key, the command key, the control key, the power button. Some people will say, no, you guys are wrong. It's Control Command Power. Apple will say the same thing. Apple has an order where these are supposed to, if there's a shift key involved, it comes before the command. If there's a control key, it comes before the command. I disagree. Nevertheless, I'm not an authority on this. Apple can tell me whatever they want, but real people say command control power, and they always have. And even my client today, unprompted, command control power. So I share this because it was on Apple's 50th anniversary and on the day that we're doing a live stream to support this, and our show is called Command Control Power, she said command control power, totally unprompted. I thought that was kind of ironic. That happens to be the very first keyboard shortcut I ever remember learning. I was there in elementary school, and I learned it as exactly right. Mike Kingsley in the chat says, my first key reset command was the older version of what your show is. So on the Apple II, it was Control, Open Apple, Reset. So I learned this as Open Apple, Control. Wait, what? Sorry. Let's see. I had it until I just tried reading this message. Open Apple, Control, Reset, I think is how I learned it also. Open Apple, was it Open Apple, Control? Yeah, I think it was Open Apple, Control, Reset, I think is how I learned it. So I learned it as Open Apple first, but what is this Open Apple thing? I mean, how old am I, right? That I know a thing called Open Apple, but that's what we used to learn. And there were two Apple keys. There was a closed Apple and an open Apple, right? And Sam, what's your recollection?
Apple on, Joe?
Oh, the open. I want to say left. Is that right or wrong?
Yeah. I'm like 90% sure, bro.
Okay, fair enough. We'll go with that. Yeah, they had, and as Mike goes on to say, they had open Apple and closed Apple keys, which were before the command key. Exactly. And there's a story that Steve Jobs came back and said, you can't have two Apple logos on the keyboard. It looks ridiculous. If you I recently read Apple's, branding guidelines or whatever, as I, in the 11th hour got recertified to stay in the program and everything. And I just read through some of the material, and Apple is very specific. Like if you have an Apple logo on your website, you use your correct, Apple Partner Network logo. You can't have another one somewhere else. You can't put two side by side. You can't have, there's very specific rules about this. And I mean, I like to say this goes back to Steve Jobs. He said, you just can't have two Apple logos on the keyboard. It just looks silly. Like you just don't do that. So they changed it from an Apple logo to the command key. And it's been that way ever since. But that was the one I learned, Open Apple, Control, Reset.
Wasn't there a time when it was the Apple logo and the command key, like on the same key?
Probably. Yeah, that's a good question. Like maybe in a transitionary period where they wanted people to understand it was the same. Yeah.
I think you're right, Sam. It had been there for a while.
Yeah.
How about all the computers that would say save changes and shut down? Do you remember that?
Save changes and shut down. I remember the term. When did that appear? Yeah.
When did it leave? I don't know. There was a time when before you would quit your, like most of the time we didn't like sleep our computers. We shut them down.
Yeah.
And there was always like that pop-up message. It would say save changes and shut down if you had something that was open and it was reminding you to save. But maybe if someone could bring more clarity. But I remember that was a big part of just the Apple experience, was seeing that message at the end of your computing session.
And I think there was a time, I think they added to like system preferences back in the day or something where you could change that behavior as well. Like don't save changes versus save changes. I can't recall exactly the details, but
all right. Now, I mean, we weren't going to get into technical things this show, really. I don't know if we weren't, but do you notice that Microsoft Office still does that? Like it will block the computer from doing an automatic restart, like a scheduled software update or something, whatever reason you need to quit Microsoft Word. Word will sit there and be like, hey, there's documents that are unsaved, Is that I haven't really played with this too much because it just doesn't come up that often, but is it that setting, Sam, that causes that? There's a system-wide setting, but maybe Word, Office doesn't respect that.
I seem to remember Microsoft didn't play nice with those settings. Like it just didn't, it just kind of ignored the save settings on the Apple side, but it's been a while since I've had to deal with that. So I can't comment directly, but I do recall that. It's like everything else would shut down except Microsoft had its own method of autosave and stuff, and you had to obey their rules.
Right. Yeah. And they also only like autosave now if you save it in one of their cloud, OneDrive or SharePoint, or I think OneDrive specifically. But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, yeah, Adam says his first, I guess this is his first keyboard shortcut on the Apple II. I would reboot the computer by typing PR number 6 at the prompt. So I don't remember that. Do you guys remember that? Like any kind of, what does that mean? PR number 6?
I think #6, right? Like you had to put in the pound key. Now I'm trying to remember. Adam, we need some clarity, man.
Yeah. Well, we got to, dust off the old Apple II and just try it, we could try it live here.
Yeah. I started typing in PR #6 and like DuckDuckGo autofilled Apple afterwards. So there's some history there.
Interesting. Yeah, definitely some history. Yeah, do you remember someone approached us once at an ACES conference and said, yeah, I didn't know what your show meant. And so I tried the keyboard shortcut and I realized it rebooted my computer.
Yeah, that was good.
That was great. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, Adam says it would cause the computer to read the floppy drive and run the init program or whatever was on there. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing working from floppy drives was really, I mean, it just the grinding sound Jerry was describing earlier. I just remember hearing all this, like, and because it would like go over here and read this and go over here and read this. And, and it took a lot of effort for it to go back and forth. And some computers only had one floppy drive, so you'd have to like put the floppy disk in to boot the computer and then like open a program and do your thing, and then when you wanted to save, you'd have to eject the like operating system disk and put in the other disk that would have allow you to save files on it, and then switch back and forth. And it was wild. I tried backing up one of my first Macs. It must have been like the Performa 600 CD that I had. I've mentioned on the show before. And it had one floppy drive, and you could back it up. You could, there was, I forget the name of the software that I think Apple produced to back up your computer, and it would back it up across, a number of floppy disks because you couldn't, it couldn't fit on one, right? So you would like you'd run the thing from the disk you boot from, then you'd put a disk in to start your backup, and then it would like while it's in memory, it would be backing up a bunch of stuff to that disk. It would be done. You'd have to like take that disk out, put the next one in. So I have some early computer backups that were spread across like 10 floppy drives
or 17
10 floppy disks, or more. Exactly. It just kept going up and up over time. It's like, this is not sustainable. Yeah,
it's interesting, hearkening back to the first hour when we were talking and you had put up that picture. Maybe you could throw it up again, Joe, for the people who didn't see it the first time, where Dwayne had that picture of the server room that had that large piece on the floor.
Oh, the other one. Yeah. Let me bring that one up here. Yep.
And what occurs to me is, we joke about it even today. Sometimes I bring it up on the show where, IBMs are for business or PCs are for business and right. And Apple is for the home. But if you look at the hardware here and the amount of effort that was put into making, the piece that's on the floor and the one right above it. I mean, Apple, and I would love to know more about that period. It was very clear to me that they were trying to make inroads into the business market and trying to gain some of that market share by making these much beefier computers that you would see in a data center versus on underneath somebody's desk. And, no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't like wipe that stink off their image that it was just a home enthusiast kind of kids sort of thing that was, not for the serious computing specialist or for a business, but clearly there was a team or many teams that were trying to push products like this. And I would love to know the history behind all that and how it ebbed and flowed and what was finally causing it to fail.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a subtle like thing to do to try to appeal to both ends of that spectrum. The home users, like you're saying, this does appeal to them. The design that would look good in your, bedroom or something is not the same design that would appeal to someone trying to rack a bunch of servers. Most as efficiently as possible. I mean, look at look at these iMac G3s, sitting there taking up all that empty space behind them, because of the design or whatever, versus, or even the Power Macs in the same way. They had the handles on the top and the bottom. Like, it's pretty cool design. They were much easier to carry than the later versions, the Power Mac G5s and stuff, with those handles that would practically cut your, hand holding them, because these were curved and ergonomic, but like, it's an ergonomic design for, to look at or to pick up, but not to put in a rack. And so you would see them kind of, haphazardly, laid on their side or whatever in some of these racks. And so how do you do both? It's an interesting question. Like, was there a team that was building software or building hardware to appeal more to the enterprise? And then on the other end, you've got people, the consumer market. Now they do a pretty good job of walking the line. I mean, a Mac Mini appeals to a lot of different people, or a Mac Studio certainly, appeals to anybody from a, creative professional to somebody, doing, I don't know, AI stuff or whatever. It's, it is interesting to see the juxtaposition of those two there.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, I mentioned on the earlier show that Scully is credited for introducing the RISC architecture, which is reduced instruction set computing that we use even present day to a certain extent. And so I'm not a Scully fanboy, but there's certainly a lot more credit there that he deserves. And I think Pogue treated him right in his book and really pointed out some of his smart decisions that he did. But it's such a fascinating history, and it's truly amazing if you've gone through even just a little part of it to see how like right now, you would say in the last 10 years or so, the company has been extremely steady. There's not these emotional waves, but with Steve in charge, there was always something that was going to happen. It was exciting. Sometimes it was great, and sometimes it was great. He thought it was great, but it wasn't so great. But people loved it. People loved the showman entrepreneur side of him. And that's the thing that I really felt was never really captured in the Walter Isaacson book about Steve Jobs. It just didn't capture that magic somehow. It was very clinical and very dissected, and it was very factual, but at the same time, it was missing the magic. Like, why was this guy so magical? They're like, he was nasty to a lot of people. He would tell people this is horrible, and whatever he had, I've said this on other shows, and other people have repeated this multiple times. And when made people say, like, you know what, I'm going to show you, and go back and make it better. Right. And there's very few people out there that have that type of charisma or that magic to them that can motivate people in that way.
It's a unique sort of combination that not only he had, but I think, like, it depends on who was working for him. Not everybody's motivated by that kind of negative reinforcement of, like, your work sucks, you're a terrible human, and then they're like, I'll show you, I'll prove to you that I do good work. Some people would just quit. I mean, probably a lot of people did quit. And so, I guess it's a selection bias type of thing as well. But yeah, that's, it's true. I wonder if we need somebody a little more charismatic than Tim Cook, for the next 50 years to, I mean, clearly we've talked about it, and so has everybody else, just on the OS level. It's just not the same as it was. I remember those days of, like, a pixel perfect OS. I mean, you wouldn't have bugs where it's just like visual cruft, where you're getting a peek behind the scenes, like, oh, I see how this is coded. This is really kind of, sloppy almost, or, it just seems like back in the day, there was a lot more of a very clear there's a level of perfection in the OS. I mean, that sounds a little crazy, because we certainly went through a lot of phases where things fell apart before your very eyes. But it seemed like back then the services backing things were worse, like, mobile me or whatever was like,
Mhm.
we'd be troubleshooting, contact syncing, blowing up, every couple of weeks or whatever. There were a lot of like back end services that were problematic, but the OS itself seemed like really well put together. Now it seems like the opposite. Like iCloud is really reliable and good, very well designed, like, security focused, all that stuff. But the OS is just buggier. I mean, I had a calendar thing happen like last week, where, I have several calendars all through my main account, and like one of them just stopped showing up and there was no error. I'm like, there's supposed to be something on my calendar here, but it's on a particular calendar that's like my secondary calendar. Just wasn't there. Okay, toggle it off, toggle it back on, didn't work, quit, reopen, no, restart, no solution. So eventually, like, turning off calendars,
I've done
quitting and
that.
reopening the app and turning on calendars, and then they all have to re-download, and that fixed it. And I'm just like, what happened there? Like, why did it just stop showing that one calendar? Like, historical events, current events, it just all went away, just weird stuff like that happens. And yeah, I don't know if like Steve, is like, what would Steve have done? Just not tolerate it? Like, is that the way you do it? You yell at people and you just eviscerate them and say your work is terrible. How could this ever happen? You embarrass me on stage, whatever it takes, and then they like really put the extra time in to make it perfect. Or are things just that much more complicated now? It's been a long time since Steve passed away. Like, everything has continued to evolve and get more complicated. So is an OS just too big for like a team of humans to, properly build? I don't know. I guess, yeah. What do you guys think about that?
I don't know. I feel like I want to say like there might be some like history there that we see as squeaky clean when it wasn't necessarily
Maybe.
always,
Yeah.
like when Steve was here, this was like this, kind
Right.
of a thing.
Right.
Because there were certainly issues, and to Jerry's point of like, he had great ideas, and also some of them were not so awesome. So they're like, I think there was a lot of ups and downs through his tenure as well. But I
Yeah.
do think, and you just posted here as well. Like Dwayne was saying how, now they can ship with like potential minor bugs and say, hey, we'll get public beta or public feedback, and then we'll update it in the 0.1.
Right.
So I think that's like a different approach than what used to happen as like, we got to release a picture perfect OS.
Yeah. Here's a couple more from Dwayne. He said, when Steve announced the ship date for the original iPad, the next day 20 engineers were on a plane to China. Yeah, I mean, I've met some of the people that do QA, and I mean, hardware QA like seems like they still are really on top of that, because I think they know, like, when the hardware ships, you're not going to, like, the last thing Apple needs, at least from the perspective of like their shareholders, is a recall, to be like, okay, we shipped that hardware, but like, turns out we're going to need it back so we can like send you a new one. They don't want that to happen. They can't let that happen. But like Dwayne said, and like you just shared, Sam, they don't do, with software, they figure, close enough, like it's going to be buggy. That's what updates are for, and yeah, I mean, so this is actually another one from Dwayne. Burrell Smith, who did the original power supply for the Mac, said Steve made him a better engineer than he ever dreamed he could be. But when he left Apple, he wanted to urinate on his desk. So, I mean, that's, comes to the territory, I guess. But imagine like the amount of effort that, so the attention to detail that Steve had for a power supply in the Mac, this is like one aspect of one product. And he was like laser focused on that among many other things. I've actually heard stories also from engineers at Apple, about like engineering, the level of, again, quality assurance that goes into a power supply for like the iPhone, for example, does a couple things. One is like, it can't catch fire. Like, it just can't, like we have to do you have to cancel your kid's birthday, you have to cancel your family vacation, like you have to make sure this will not happen, and it has to ship by this date. So that's there's some things that they really like hold a hard line on, they also do amazing feats of engineering to make sure it's as power efficient as possible, because literally, you ship millions of these things. If you save a couple of millivolts, here and there, you save the world some, like material amount of power. I mean, so they focus on this stuff on the hardware side. And I think Dwayne probably nailed it. It's like, if, software, it's just a different category. They know they can fix it later. And that's the answer for everything. It's like, we'll fix it later,
Yeah.
with software.
I think the fit and the finish on the hardware has gotten better, exceptionally better over the years. And it used to be that the software was better and the fit and finish on the hardware not so. But now it's like those roles have been reversed. And the fact that so many people can find holes in the operating system, annoyances that we deal with every day. If you listen to someone like John Gruber, he's talking about the topography and how different workflows are represented and why things are done the way they did. They abandoned the human interface guidelines that they had in place for many, many years. And now, it's somewhat followed, but for the most part, there's all this wiggle room. So it's just experientially, just for the simple fact, when we do client support and we're in system settings, unless we know this cold, we're using the search box, right? To find profile, right?
I'll admit that here.
For system management. It's like, I could hunt for system management, but if I put in profile, I'm going to get there. I'm going to put in the profile or do whatever. Right. So, I mean, just that alone, it's so problematic. And I think
that's such a great example, Jerry, just to jump in there. Imagine in the early days of computers, Apple came out with the graphical user interface. So you didn't have to type things in from memory, right? Like now we're back to a command line interface to find where do I find profiles? Like it should be 2 clicks that are very easy to remember. That was the whole point of the GUI, which is like Apple's main innovation in the early days. You're telling a story now where you're back to typing in essentially a command, like you're typing in profiles just to find the thing in the GUI because it's not obvious. And clearly there's a failing there where people like us are actually typing in the thing we're looking for because it's not obvious where to find it.
Well, it also moved. I mean, like, right? Like now it is 2 clicks away, but it did move, so that became confusing from one OS to the next. It's like,
right.
I thought
it moved a couple of times, didn't it? I mean, it was originally profiles, its own thing in system preferences. Then it was under privacy and security, I think. Did they change the name of that? Was it security and privacy in one version?
Yes,
okay. So there's that's 3 changes right there. And then now it's under general, scroll to the bottom. Like it just, you guys are going to keep moving it. I'm going to keep forgetting. I'm just going to search every time. Yeah. So it's like, I mean, I remember now, but like Jerry's saying, I mean, how many times are you going to move the cheese, as they say, before I'm going to stop? Is that the right term? I don't know. Before I'm going to stop, playing this game with you, to go find the, where you put profiles. I'm just going to search,
Now technically someone could say, well, you're doing more. It's 2026. This is not the days of Jaguar, as Steve would call it, or Panther, right? That's true. But at the same time, there's so many layers to this OS. And there's no turning back at this point. I mean, we're so far down the rabbit hole, and there's all these maybe Dante's rings of hell that we get caught up in. And there's no way somebody could come in with some mastermind and somehow pull this all together. It's just a question of how much more do we want to keep piling on? Do we want another 100 new features this fall? Or just where does it end?
Well, I go back to, this is my hobby horse. I always refer back to this concept of shareholder primacy. It means that the people who own the stock are you answer to them and basically no one else, right? And Steve, going back to Steve, I mean, his whole thing was the customer, right? The customer was the first person you answer, the first and last person you answer to. Developers were off to the side somewhere. It's Apple first, customers second, developers way far down the line on number 3. But capitalism, or this modern corporate structure says like for public companies, you have to answer to the shareholders. Like they gave you money so that you could earn a bunch of money and give a little bit back to them. You owe them, like you're indebted to your shareholders. So you have to do what's best for your shareholders. And it's like, okay, so shareholders are directing like what's best for Apple. Well, yeah, I mean, like, why does Apple release an OS every year? I didn't tell them to do that. Like the users didn't say, I want something to change every users. We hear this every day. They don't want it to change. Why do you keep changing my OS? I don't ever install updates. This is what users actually say. They don't want change. They don't want new OSs. They don't want 1,000 new features or whatever it is. They want you to just like stop moving things around. Stop, like why are you moving profiles 5 times in 5 years? Like, just don't do that. I used to make fun of Microsoft that they would, I would learn where something was in Word, and every new version of Word, they would just arbitrarily move it for no good reason. This is what Apple's been doing. And so I think it's the yearly cadence for their OS releases. Like, we don't need a brand new OS every year. Why? Since when did that become this thing that we all just assume is like a truism? Like, you have to release it. Microsoft doesn't do that. Why does Apple do that?
But it could be argued that doesn't even serve the shareholders anyway, because they're not selling the operating system. It doesn't cost you any more money to get the 100 new features. So what's the motivation? The motivation should be, we put out new products, we're going to drive sales. It's not necessarily adding 50 more features to the OS is going to drive our sales.
Right. I mean, I agree. I just think it's like, it's misguided but I think that, I mean, where does that come from then?
I don't know.
But I think if you're releasing new hardware, you kind of, this is just where I'm going with this, is like in my head, if you're releasing new hardware, you don't want that hardware to look with the old OS, because that's old and the hardware is new. So I feel like there's a little bit of, we need to make it all look new, so we're going to release a new OS along with, I mean, doesn't fall at the same timeline as new hardware, but it has that fancy new look to it.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just my thinking. But I get what you're saying, like in terms of like the moving of things, like it does get a little annoying.
Yeah.
Hopefully users aren't navigating the profiles anyway, but a
guy like
the ones that have to go there.
Yeah, a guy like Sam Joe has built his career on things moving around. If things didn't move around and things didn't change, Sam, for the most part, would not have a job.
A guy like Sam, what do you mean? Like
you'd be trained once and you just know the answer.
Oh yeah.
It never like
you wouldn't need any other
so that you don't know where to find it.
Right. Yeah.
If nothing changed, we wouldn't have to get more certifications. It would be, and Sam would be penniless. Him and his family would be kicked to the curb. They need this.
But like anything, there's a balance in life. The real work is like sussing out the nuance of this. Like where, how many times per 5-year period should profiles be moved? I don't know, like maybe 0, maybe 1. It's like you redesign system preferences, you go to system settings, like just put it somewhere, and that's probably the right place. It's not like
where is that coming? Like you said, where is that coming from? Who's doing this? Like,
well, I think Sam I think that's a good point. You want it to look new. That's there. Like, consumerism. Like, how do you sell more products to people? Planned obsolescence is one actual way that people do that. I'm not saying Apple does. I think that Apple does a lot to counter that. They do some things that just, are part of that. Like, I mean, why does the OS, why do they stop supporting the older devices at a certain point in time? Like, they probably could still support an 8 or 9 or 10-year-old Mac. They could, it's not in their shareholders' interest if they do that, because they want to sell you new hardware. But they can make, why do cars change their, it's like the new car suddenly makes the old car, the old model, look really old. Like, I don't know, there's some psychology that happens to us where it's like, man, my car looks old now. I guess I need a new one,
There's but that's worse, like Jerry, you probably, I mean, Joe doesn't buy new cars these days, or
he doesn't buy cars.
Or update. Van down by the river. But like, if we look at if you buy a car and then the next year they remodel that car, that's so frustrating.
It is. Right.
But renaming profiles or moving it to another location does not make my computer look older or newer. it just makes it more difficult. And
It's true.
it puts bread on Sam's table.
So you think it's the trainers that are doing this?
I think it's
the
Sam's
training conspiracy. Yeah. Yeah.
Some diabolical HCS money
people
grab.
Listening, this is what happens, man. These guys gang up on me.
No, I think you're onto something with like, it has to look new and shiny, especially if they want to sell new hardware. They never make a distinction like that. Hey, by the way, you can get the new look on your 1 or 2 year old, iPhone. Like, they don't say that, I mean, they do, they don't hide it, but like, they're implying, like, when they show this product, like the product shot of the new iPhone, to your point, if it looked exactly like the phone they have in their hand already, people would just say, I guess I already have that. Like, I don't know. Is it even new? So making making the software look different over time, I guess is part of selling products. But I mean, you could polish stuff without moving everything around or fundamentally breaking things. But so the other thing to look at here into the future, because maybe this is going to get better. We went through these cycles we talked about mostly in part 1. I mean, Motorola processors, what do they call it? I want to say like my old zip code, the x86, right? The Motorola, like, it was like the 08.
Yeah, but then we had the Power PC. So that
then
was
went Power PC.
last iteration.
And that was the RISC processor,
That's right.
Right. This went to the RISC processor. And I remember like reading in some, magazine, it was like, the first supercomputer. Like, it was a supercomputer on your desk because it did like a million flops or something. I don't know, but it was so fast, right?
Gigaflops.
Gigaflops, yeah. They went from the Motorola style, x86 to Power PC, and this was all before anybody cared what Apple was doing, So then we had for a long time the IBM Power PC line, and then they went to Intel, and so that was an amazing announcement. And of course, we've just gone back to now, Apple Silicon. So we're going through another transition. When they went from Power PC to Intel, there was a release in there that everybody keeps referring to, the Snow Leopard release. No new features, as Jerry keeps saying. No new features. Snow Leopard was also the first. What did you say, Jerry?
Okay. This is your little.
No, you say no new features.
Yeah, you say no new features.
Yeah, I thought you were saying. So anyway, okay.
You all you want is 10.6 back. That's all
I want. No, so 10.6 Snow Leopard was the first Intel only release, like OS release. It just so happens that it was also, the no new features, the one that everybody sings the praises of. And as I mentioned recently, I don't actually remember if it was Howard Oakley or it might have been like Mr. Macintosh. Somebody recently pointed out how actually there were a bunch of new features in that OS. We all like pretend that it's this like perfect thing that we're trying to aim for again, but you can do new features and you can also polish the OS and make it really bulletproof. And, that's what they achieved with Snow Leopard more or less. And I wonder if it was partially because it was like a single platform. They weren't, they didn't have this legacy code base that they had to like continue to maintain compatibility with. They were able to scrap all the, at that time, Power PC stuff and just focus on this, making it work really well for Intel. So maybe next year when it will, I guess, do we know that it will be Apple Silicon only, no more Intel? I think at that point, the whatever macOS 27, like that they released this year, yeah, that will be, I think, Apple Silicon only. Maybe this will give them that kind of opportunity to, do the quote no new features. I think they'll probably make a nod to that. I mean, everyone's clamoring for it. It would be kind of crazy if they said, we're not doing that. We're releasing a bunch of new features and we're moving profiles again just for the command control power guys, I think there's a good chance we'll get a solid release this time around, and it's about damn time. But, there's a balance they have to find between some new features and mostly like devoting engineering resources to fixing bugs and making all the windows look the same and stop changing the corner radius and all that,
Right.
Oh man, I can't wait to see profiles move. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, one more time. Yeah.
You gotta, you could do a whole chapter on that, Sam. In your class.
We'll do a whole show about it when it happens. You guys ranting, it'll be awesome.
Imagine the sales, Sam. You would just have, the moving profiles that puts the asses in the seats, doesn't it? In the classroom,
we're gonna create a new class called "How to Find Profiles."
So the move to Intel. Did you guys ever own a Core Duo machine, or did you buy the Core? Did you wait a little longer to get the Core?
I helped clients with Core Duo. I mean, those were dogs, though. Those were like way
and
worse than Core 2.
And then they had the Core 2. Yeah. I got a Core Duo used. I bought it from a kid at a college because he was, ready to let it go because he needed the faster processor. But that was very interesting too, that transition. And it took a long time to really see any sort of improvement. I mean, what really made your machine sing was when we could buy a third-party SSD and put it inside our portable or our Mac. And that was a big inflection point as well in terms of just being able to keep up with the other PCs that were out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. That an SSD upgrade was kind of like the Apple Silicon of the Intel era. It was like you're saying. I mean, that made a difference. And I remember telling clients back then, like buying a new Mac with a hard drive, I don't care what Apple's saying about the processing power and the memory and all this other stuff, you almost won't even notice a difference on your new Mac compared to your old Mac, other than if you go to an SSD. Like that's what actually is a noticeable improvement. But going to new hardware, whether you're going from PowerPC to Intel or, early generation Intel to late generation Intel, that made almost no difference compared to going to SSD. Let alone now with this Apple Silicon transition, that's still they're still so far ahead of everybody else. It's really, really impressive. Speaking of things moving though, did you guys notice with the recent BSI that's not in software update? It's under privacy and security. Maybe that's a PSA for people out there, but the background security improvement, the BSI, formerly called Sam, help me out, RSR.
What did you just say the acronym was?
Wasn't it RSR for the previous one? And now it's
BSI. The Rapid Security Release.
Rapid Security Release. Thank you. Yeah. They used that once ever, I think, as far as we know, and they broke stuff. The RSR that they did. I think there was only ever one RSR, but anyway, that's now called the BSI Background Security Improvement. They did one for 26.3.1A was the BSI. That is found in privacy and security when it's needed. It's not found in software updates. So speaking of this moving things around and making system settings a guessing game, I just was surprised. Why is that? I don't
know, but this is amusing me actually. Yeah. I kind of like.
These are all the little complaints. I'm supposed to be celebrating Apple. I mean, maybe the first half of the show is more of the walk down memory lane and celebrating Apple. And now we're like, what are you guys?
Now Grumpy Joe is back.
Yeah. Here, let's take us back down memory lane here. This is yet another contribution from Dwayne. Thank you, Dwayne Moss, for contributing so much to this show. This is a table showing 4 of those
Coke cans, 3 Coke cans, 2 Coke cans.
Yeah. No, one's Pepsi.
There's a Pepsi.
Yeah.
2 Cokes and a Pepsi. Yeah.
But
3 Cokes and a Pepsi. I think I see one in the back.
The first thing I noticed was the Macs, but you guys are talking about the soda. Maybe you're thirsty, but yeah, 4 Macs, around a table. It's just a interesting, snapshot in time here. I feel like I've been to clients like that.
And all those thick iMacs were just like boat anchors in terms of weight. Oh my gosh.
God, so heavy. Imagine all that weight being shipped all over the world. And geez,
I hated to lug those around.
Yeah. Did you guys have those? I bought a case with wheels that you could put the iMac in a sleeve and roll it if you needed to repair it. I had one of those.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Which model? For the iMac?
They had these honking 27 inches that were just super heavy.
Yeah. I had padded cases for those too.
Yeah,
because we used to go. Yeah, do like Jerry was saying that these SSD upgrades. That was a really big, offering for us for a long time because people were so impressed with the outcome of those.
I remember that
until the screen started falling off for me.
It's the cheap tape.
It wasn't the cheap tape. It was the environmental. wasn't the technician, it was environmental. So is there a Apple device or thing that you use, what it could be your computer, could be anything, that you just love or delights you every single day? Because I have one.
My watch.
Yours. Yeah.
That's the way. Exactly, Sam. That's exactly the way I feel.
You guys both say the watch. Huh.
Yeah.
It delights you every day. Maybe I need a new one. This is like the Series 7
it's like,
or something.
If I work out with a watch without the watch, it's like it didn't happen. Like I need my watch.
I understand that.
Like give me that. Like yes, I just did that. You know.
Yeah.
But not that you're out on a walk or a hike or whatever, and somebody texts you. You could. It's truly delightful, especially with the cellular connection. I wouldn't buy it any other way. Now you've got the more expensive watch, and I've got the standard issue watch, Sam. But that truly is a product for me that's been transformative. I wear it all the time. I wear it to sleep. I gauge my sleeping patterns with it. I don't, hover and call the data and make charts and things like that. But just in the joy that it gives me just to stay in communication and to have it on my wrist. And I never was a watch wearer at all, ever in my life. I had a really nice watch that just ended up staying in a closet drawer or a drawer.
Yeah.
Closet drawer.
Closet drawer. Yeah.
Drawer in your closet.
Yeah, right. When I'm in my closet, I put it in my drawers.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've never worn a watch. I mean, since I was a kid or something, like until the Apple Watch. And I think you guys are both right. It's largely for the metrics from my, walks basically and hikes and things.
Yeah.
Sometimes a yoga class, that I'll track that. And it does feel good that like, I don't know. It feels like someone is, keeping track of this, and it's just my watch. But yeah, it's like you get credit for it.
But that's not only it too. It's like to be able to, instead of running like a jerk to the counter where your phone is, you could pick up a phone call.
Yeah, true.
How nice is that?
Yeah.
I typically don't do that with my watch, but yeah, I hear you.
I've got this little
add a client on it typically, but yeah, like if my wife's calling me, I'm like, yeah.
I've got this little add-on to my watch where if we're sitting down and having dinner and a particular track is too loud, I can turn down the volume with the crown.
Yeah, nice. Cool. That's cool.
I mean, that's like, wow.
That's magic. I agree. Yeah. That's a very cool feature. Okay, you're convincing me. I mean, I'm right there with between you guys and Adam Rice. Adam says I think AirPods are probably the best product ever. I've said that on the show before. I mean, we're not the first people to say
no
this,
argument there.
Yeah, I mean, this is a product where it's like Apple at their best, and just in terms of how it works across all your devices, but just it's so reliable, and such high quality audio. I mean, it changes my experience of being on an airplane. Like it's just really nice not to have that droning sound of the engines or the people around you and the chaos. It's just like actually adds to my quality of life, in that way. And not to mention, I literally use it like almost all day, every day, whether I'm listening to a podcast or, music while I'm working, or mostly, on the phone with clients. I mean, it's just such an easy, thing to just have that. I can walk around, I can pace around the room and they just work. It's great. So yeah. And Dwayne agrees with you guys. The watch, he loves it for everything, especially golf. So there you go. I mean, that's, I'm sure it can like probably track your swing and stuff like that, and just track your steps obviously as you walk around the course.
Yeah, although I will say that like a lot of the younger generation are going back to corded AirPods. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
I've noticed
like,
that.
That's like a trend. I think it's like more of a retro trend. I mean, some people have talked about just Bluetooth being bad or something like that, but it's more on the retro trend, I think, and it's funny to see that stuff start to come back when it's like a thing of the past. But I will agree that the AirPods are transformative. I mean, they've done so much.
Yeah,
I love mine.
Yeah, the handoff is quite fantastic most of the time.
Yeah,
from
it's
the
gotten
phone
so much better.
Back to the computer. Yeah, it's really great.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I mean, that's something only Apple can really do. I mean, just having that level of integration. Although the EU is trying to convince them to make all that possible for anybody, which I understand that it's good sentiment behind that. but that opens them up to, there's a lot of privacy concerns with that. So
do we have a couple more pictures to share? I know we're getting close to the end of the show.
Yeah, so let's see here. We have this was from John Brown, shared his family of iPhones there.
Nice.
So that's we can all relate to something like that. Those
That's
are
like iOS 4.
Yeah, what can you identify some of those phones there, guys? I see home buttons on all of them, so it's got to be what was before Touch ID? iPhone 4S, 5S maybe? Does that sound right?
In the 5s, yeah, I think. Wait, no. Now I don't know. I don't remember. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to think of like the time that Touch ID and then eventually Face ID turned into that. But do you know, Jerry?
I have no idea. These all look the same to me. I mean, I have them. I have a box where they're all in there, and I just don't care to pull them out. I mean, I'm more interested in the iPod than I am, either a phone or an iPod phone.
Yeah.
Or the phones that look like, or the iPods that look like phones. Those don't interest me either. But the old traditional iPod with the click wheel, love those.
Yeah. Yeah. Those were cool.
Yeah.
I see YouTube on the third one, and the middle one rather. It's that old school YouTube TV. Icon.
Yeah, when that's actually the emoji, like a TV emoji still, I think. Is that right?
Maybe, yeah. Well, that's a good one.
That was the one when Apple, is this right? Apple designed that. They engineered the app. They made sure to include YouTube on the first iPhone, but I don't think they let Google into the phone, right? In that case.
Oh, and you gotta love the duct tape on the connector there on the 30 pin.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, exactly. That's also something we can all relate to for sure. Yeah.
Wait, I think those two are plugged into each other. The cable, it seems to maybe turn. I don't know. maybe not.
It's pretty amazing.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I don't know.
You can take an old click wheel iPod with the 30 pin connector, and you could either get an adapter to USB-C or USB-A to USB-C, plug it into your brand new Mac out of the box, plug it in. It's recognized in Finder.
What is?
The click wheel iPod, and you could drag music to it. Yeah, you could drag music to it. It's like it's never left.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's pretty wild.
Pretty amazing that they have
that.
Backwards compatibility like that.
Compati?
Yeah. It's really No, that is really interesting. Let's see. We had a couple of other shares here. In case this is interesting to people. I mean, I like this kind of stuff because it's just really, it just brings me back. It really brings me back here. So this is also John Brown.
Here's John Brown.
He's in the photo. Unboxing an what does he say here? An Xserve.
Yeah, sure looks like it.
Yep. And so there it is in the huge. You can even see the Apple logo on the box there.
Yep.
And there's a rack of it looks like Dell servers behind him. So this was the I guess maybe Mac going in to replace some or add to one of his clients there. Yeah, we've all been doing this for a long time, guys. This is amazing. Here's something that's pretty interesting too. Dwayne shared this as well, which is I guess it looks like. Is this like an Apple badge? Like not a badge, but sort of like an entry card or something like that. It's pretty interesting. Yeah. So. And Dwayne, if you want to share more about what that is, but it looks like, is that your employee
No, that may
ID
be a
number or something, or
no, that may be like an Apple purchase. Yeah, an Apple internal purchase card of some sort.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah,
the original Apple credit card. He said.
That's what Dwayne says. Yeah, that's funny.
Right, but it was only for Apple gear, right, Dwayne?
I believe.
And you were billed.
That sounds right.
Yeah, and it was only available to employees, I believe.
That's so interesting. Yeah, like throwing.
I didn't know he had 3 tours at Apple.
Yeah, it's pretty wild to hear that story. That's awesome. Dwayne's got a lot of interesting, stories from the field of what it was like to be, an Apple person, to be at Apple corporate and be there when a lot of this stuff was happening. That is pretty interesting. I wish I could find this video for you guys to play. Sam, you're talking about the AirPods versus the wired earbuds. I mean, I get it. Are they worried about RF in their ears or something? But those
Some people
cords,
are.
I just can't deal with it. I don't know how people do that. Like walking
Yeah.
around with cords everywhere, pulling things out of your ear and everything. I don't know.
Well, if you're a true audiophile, right, you're going to use wired with your phone or with your Samsung phone to get.
That's true too. Yeah.
Because the Bluetooth codec standard is still lossy. It's not true lossless. And the only way to get lossless, that's why with the Apple headphones, which are called the what are they called? Help me out here, guys. The Apple over-the-ear headphones.
AirPods Max?
The AirPods Max, to get true lossless, meaning no degradation in signal, you need a wire.
Interesting. Right. Yep. I mean, you're the audiophile here.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, but I think what Sam's saying is it's more of a statement. It's more of a fashion statement.
Well, it seems to be, I'll say. I think that's the thing.
2 turntables and a microphone. That's what I'm saying.
Nice. Yeah. Where it's at.
Nice. Yeah, exactly. Oh man. Maybe I could share this from social media. I wish I could share this for you guys. It's a, I won't be able to. Yeah, I guess I won't be able to share it. It's on Instagram. That's okay.
There's
edit point. Yeah.
I certainly enjoyed seeing the submissions from people in here, and just seeing some of the throwback photos and stuff was pretty amazing.
Yeah. Thank you everybody for listening and contributing. This was great. Couldn't do it without you.
Yeah, really appreciate it. This is one Sam shared. I don't know where you got this photo, Sam, but I'll go ahead and share it. This is the early days of my my operation.
You had like some kind of local gathering, and I came over and I took a shot.
What a mess! What an absolute mess this was. But yeah, this is called a startup. This is a startup. Operation there, and I had a workbench behind my desk. I had like a desk with facing computers, so you could have 2 people sitting and working there. Another workstation where I had a stack of, it looks like Mac Mini servers and storage and things, and an airport maybe Extreme on the wall there.
I see that. The airport base station is what that is.
Nice. Airport base station, exactly.
The dome, the dome shaped.
The dome, yeah.
Yeah, actually at the time I think I was just taking secret photos of my competition, but now
right. Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, fun times though. I mean, that's the evolution, from now I'm all about keep it simple, and not over engineer. I love the remote work lifestyle and not having to be at a desk, in an office or on-site even with clients most of the time. Although I did have my very first on-site new client meeting very recently, local here, and so it gave me, just got me back on track with being available for on-sites again. So that was awesome. Fun here. Yeah, it was neat.
Well, Jerry's doing the symbols.
This is the send off when Jerry starts making hand gestures and mudras on screen here.
Mine
means he's ready to hang up his microphone for the night. So
that's how you know Jerry's done.
That is how you know. Well, thanks everybody for participating and sending us your fun memories and sharing your memories of Apple and your world and what Apple has meant to you. We certainly, for me, Apple has meant, everything. It's I'm Team Apple all the way. I've been down this road professionally for 22 years now, and I really owe a lot of it to Apple. They've inspired me to do what I do for a living, and I feel like I backed the right company back when I got started in my business and everything else. So with all the complaints that I've shared over the years from the podcast, even including up until and including today, I still am a huge fan of Apple. And one reason I'm a fan of Apple is you can do fun stuff like this. Sam, how did you do that? What was that? You're raining on my parade here. How did you do that? That's a new one. Is that built into?
That's in the reactions in your video icon in your menu bar.
Oh, okay. I haven't played with that one yet. Maybe I need to upgrade to the
I
new
like
OS.
that one a lot, actually.
They're gonna move they're gonna move profiles again if I upgrade. But wait, where do you get reactions? There you go. Okay, nice. Oh, the rain one. Yeah, even I can. Okay, very cool.
I
Yeah,
love it.
I don't know why I don't think I've seen that one before. That's a good one. I like that one. Very cool. What's the party one? Oh yeah, the party stuff. Yeah,
Oh,
let's all
man.
do. Let's
I'm losing
on.
my mind. What do you
Yeah,
want? Which one do you want to do together?
the party one as we
right.
send off, Apple. Oh, Jerry's got a few going at once.
Yeah.
This is great for the listeners. Everybody, this is what
All right, we're getting punchy
for.
after 2 hours.
Yeah, we're getting exactly with no break. But seriously, thanks Apple, for being there, and thank you to all of our colleagues for being there today with us and helping us celebrate. And here's to another 50 years of awesomeness from Apple. I'm really glad Apple's out there, really aiming for privacy, not always, doing it perfectly, but aiming for privacy and security and integration with all this stuff and making technology accessible to regular people. And, Apple does that and we help Apple do that. And I'm honored to be able to, make a living doing it. So thanks everybody once again for helping us celebrate. Happy 50th birthday / anniversary, Apple. And cue up your party reaction, everybody, and we'll send them off with that. Thanks a lot for listening to Command Control Power. Thanks everybody for joining us. Find out more at commandcontrolpower.com. And thanks again.